I used to think that getting my dream physique was all about losing body fat. I was practically obsessed with the idea. As it turns out, I was wrong about that. But it took me years to figure out why and what it really takes to get an aesthetic physique as a natural. It's like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots when looking backwards. And my hope in this video is to give you the insights that I didn't have anybody to tell me. This way you can get on the right path from the get-go rather than wasting years in the gym getting nowhere. And looking back, I realized that I went through 3 big phases as I built my physique, and each phase taught me a valuable lesson that I will never forget. So in this video, I want to take you through those 3 phases, what I learned, and what I would do differently if I had the chance to do it again. Now diving into it, phase 1 is what I'd call the fat loss obsession phase. When I started, I was hyper focused on getting lean. In my mind, that was the thing that made the best physique stand out. And being an all or nothing person, I went all in. Quickly removed all fast food and junk food, cut out sugars, cut out sodas, kept my carbs very low. I even stopped eating dairy, which was common fat loss advice back then. My meals became very bland and repetitive. It was chicken breast, broccoli, green peas, some almonds, and brown rice almost every single day. I was also hitting the gym 4 or 5 days per week using a program that I got randomly from the internet, and I was also doing cardio on top of that. Every morning I'd go for a run on an empty stomach, not because I loved it, not because I wanted to, but because everything I read said that if I do this perfectly for 6 months, I'm gonna get the physique that I wanted. But 6 months later, down 35 pounds, I still didn't have the results I was looking for. So I thought maybe it just takes a little longer for some people. If I just lose another 12 to 15 pounds, that's gonna be it. But losing fat became very slow. On a good week, I'd be losing about half a pound. And I really found myself struggling to stay on track, to stay motivated, because hunger kept increasing and I kept getting impatient. And slowly, as I got closer to the 1 year mark, I'd hit a wall, both physically and mentally. Sure, I lost a lot of weight, but I was actually starting to look worse. I'd become skinny and I still couldn't see my abs properly. I was starting to get comments from people telling me not to lose more weight and friends asking me if I'm doing okay. And initially, I ignored those, but as the weeks went by, I started questioning things. I'd been so obsessed with seeing the scale go down that I never stopped to ask myself, what if the real issue wasn't just the fat, but also a lack of muscle? And it finally clicked. Fat loss only reveals the physique that you have. And the truth is, I didn't have a physique to show. Like many guys, I was starting off with very little muscle, and the severe calorie restriction and cardio didn't help me gain much of it. So after about 12 months of discipline, frustration, and sacrifice, I realized I was going about this very wrong. I should have gotten somewhat lean and ended the cut after those initial 6 months, and then focused on building more muscle and learning how to do that. Instead, I continued to cut too deep, and I was grinding every week to lose half a pound, and I didn't even look any better. So if you're starting with a lot of body fat and you don't have a decent amount of muscle on you, it's fine to focus on fat loss first, but you need to pay attention when you hit that wall of diminishing returns. I don't recommend chasing 10% body fat if you don't have a base of muscle. If I had shifted my focus earlier, I could have spent more time actually building my physique instead of chasing this illusion of a shredded physique that didn't even exist. This would have saved me from a lot of frustration and self-doubt in those early stages. Now phase 2 was the shift to building the physique. I learned my lesson, it was time to grow, and the idea was I'm gonna try to get lean again once I have more muscle on me. And this was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. I'd become so accustomed to cutting calories that I was now afraid of eating more. The idea of seeing the scale go up was very uncomfortable. So at first, I barely added calories. I still did a lot of cardio because I wanted to gain muscle without gaining weight, which was a big mistake. I started to get stuck in what I today call perma-cutting, not realizing that in order to gain muscle, you have to gain some body fat. And it's really about improving the ratio of muscle to fat for every pound that you gain. Also, I learned that building muscle is much harder and slower than fat loss. It operates on an entirely different timeline. Losing a pound a week is normal, but gaining a pound of muscle takes a month or even longer, and you have to be really on point with your training, nutrition, recovery, and hitting the like button on my videos, which I wasn't. And looking back, it's no surprise that I struggled to gain muscle in those early stages. But that all started to change when I learned about progressive overload and I became more data-driven with my approach. I started to treat my workouts like a game. Every session, I had a goal. I wanted to beat the logbook. And the more I focused on performing better in the gym and viewing myself as an athlete instead of a dieter, the better results I would see. It was at that time that I finally benched 2 plates, an achievement that took me a very long time. And I started to understand something that nobody really talks about. It takes years to build an impressive physique if you're a guy with average genetics and you're starting without a lot of muscle like I did. It's not 90 days and it's not 6 months. There is no quick fix. You have to be consistent and you have to have a lot of patience. And when you're shifting from fat loss to building muscle, you can't tiptoe into it and still undereat. You have to commit to gaining 1 to 2 pounds per month, eating your protein, and getting stronger. I wasted months in this gray area where I ate too little to gain muscle, but just enough to keep myself spinning my wheels. If I'd embraced the process earlier, focused on progressive overload, tracked my workouts with the intent to improve, and gotten over my fear of gaining a little weight, I would have seen results much sooner. And this brings us to phase 3, which is when I decided to finally get shredded. By this time, I was about 5 years into my lifting journey. I built a decent amount of muscle and felt like I was ready to get to 8 to 10% body fat. It was also a chance to apply everything I learned about nutrition and training. Every meal was weighed and measured to hit the calories and macros. I was weighing myself daily, looking at weekly averages, taking regular progress photos, measuring my waist. I focused on getting 10 to 12,000 steps per day rather than long cardio sessions. I was also lifting 5 days per week with a proper program to preserve muscle mass. I knew what had to be done and I was 100% committed. And after about 7 months of robot mode consistency with some minor ups and downs, I finally got there. I was under 10% body fat and I looked as lean as the guys I saw online. But it came at a heavy cost. My calories were so low for so long that I experienced permanent hunger. I was dreaming about eating pancakes and having pizzas. I felt cold even though it was summer. My libido was completely gone. And let me say that my girlfriend wasn't happy about that. I was getting weaker in the gym and everything felt so heavy. I'd get into arguments very easily and get agitated, even if it's simple everyday stuff. And even though I looked shredded in photos, which was great, physically and mentally, I felt horrible. And at the time, nobody was really talking about all the negative side effects of getting shredded as a natural lifter. Fitness influencers were sub 10% body fat all year round and kept pushing the same idea. And I started to realize that a lot of this was fake, that this goal of being shredded all the time isn't sustainable for a natural guy like me. And this really forced me to re-examine what I thought I knew about getting lean and how a lot of it is driven by unrealistic standards set by social media. I experienced firsthand how being leaner isn't always better. And since then, I shifted my goals to stay around 12 to 15% body fat, which is still lean, but I can maintain it as a lifestyle all year round. And when I want to, I can dip to 10% body fat for a short time. And when I go in a lean bulk, I can let myself gain weight slowly until I hit about 15 to 17% body fat, clean up, and then I'm back in my range. This lesson about social media setting unrealistic standards really changed my overall perspective with fitness. When you scroll through your feeds, it's easy to get this impression that everyone is benching 350 pounds, deadlifting 6 plates, and staying sub 10% body fat. But the reality is very different. People who stand out on social media are usually genetic outliers, and in most cases genetic outliers who also use performance enhancers. Comparing yourself to them makes no sense, and it just sets you up with the wrong expectations. So I really hope you can learn from my experience and avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. And if you feel stuck in a plateau right now, remember that those are also part of the process. Keep learning, keep adapting, and stay consistent. Consistency and time are the real secrets behind having an aesthetic physique as a natural. And if you're interested in coaching and working with me on your fitness journey to get results, details for coaching are in the description below. So check those out, and I'm gonna see you in my next video.